Byron, welcome. I'm joined today by my good friend and my colleague, who happens to be the Chief Marketing Officer at Cancer Vax, Byron Elton. Byron, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Ryan.
This is really, this is kind of a cool opportunity and a new thing that we're doing at Cancer Vax. We're, at Byron, of course, as you know, but what we're doing is we're working on trying to develop new treatments to prevent and to cure cancer. We know that cancer it's a big deal. It affects so many of us, right? It's the second leading cause of death around the world. And so one of the things that we're doing is reaching out to those who have been personally impacted by cancer, and we want to hear their stories. And I think that, and I hope that listening and hearing the personal stories of those who have been impacted by cancer can help motivate and rally all of us to get behind causes, not just Cancer Vax, but causes surrounding different companies and different opportunities to solve this problem. And so, Byron, I'd love for you to share your story with us. I know you're a cancer survivor, and congratulations for that. And I'd just love to hear your story.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. I'm so delighted to be here. And I should say at the outset, I thought I was the last guy that would ever be, giving a video testimonial about beating cancer. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But as you mentioned, you and I are colleagues at Cancer Vax. It reminds me when I was a kid, and I'm a little bit older than you are. There was a guy, I think it was Gillette was the company. And the whole campaign was around, the guy said, I liked the company so much I bought it, right? And so I often thought, there's lots of ways that you can spend your day and make a living. And at this point of my life, to be able to work on something so noble, such a great cause, as creating a universal vaccine for cancer is pretty amazing, and I feel very fortunate. So, thank you for having me. And you're right. As I sit here today, I'm officially a cancer survivor. So, but let me tell you my story, because and part of it will just kind of segue into why I think what we're doing and what our amazing folks at UCLA are doing is so important and so meaningful to me personally. But again, I got to tell you, man, I thought I was bulletproof. As you said, everybody has been affected by cancer. I was at a Dodger game a couple of years ago, Cancer Awareness Night. They actually had at one point, fifth inning or something, they said they paused a little bit and they gave everybody a card where you could write a name on it, or names of people you lost to cancer.
Wow.
And the first part was, they said, anybody who's had cancer, stand up. And I think there was 40,000 people at Dodger Stadium. And my guess is at least 20,000 people stood up.
That must have been moving.
Half the crowd, right? And then they said,
yeah,
anybody who's been affected by it, personally, a friend, family. And then you had these cards that you'd hold up with people's name on. I don't remember anybody in that stadium sitting down, right?
That must have been an emotional moment.
Yeah. And I remember thinking at the time, nobody, says, I don't know anybody that's had cancer. I've never lost anybody to cancer, right? But again, listen, I don't smoke. I don't drink. I never have. I play tennis 2-3 times a week. I've kept myself physically fit. I'm fiendishly obsessive about my diet. I've been plant-based for 40 years. I mean, I didn't do this, but if you'd have said, hey, I really don't want to get cancer, what are the things that I need to do to kind of make sure that this doesn't happen? Check, right?
Yeah.
And what saved my life, interestingly enough, was something that almost killed me. I was like an idiot riding a bicycle without a helmet on. Lesson number one, always wear a helmet when you're on a bike. And to this day, I don't know what happened, by the way. I have no memory whatsoever, except waking up, coming to at some point in the middle of the street in a pool of blood, and ambulances coming in and picking me up and taking me to the hospital, which fortunately was very close to the house. But because of my my ignorance about a cancer, and that anybody can get it, and in the case of prostate cancer, which is what I had, Most men do. It would be unlikely for someone not, whether or not it's enough to cause you real problems remains to be seen, but most men get prostate cancer.
Yeah.
So I hadn't been having my regular blood checkups, et cetera, et cetera. But because of this accident, which almost killed me, they had to do a bunch of blood work. And then in the process of that, came back to me and said, you know, you've got some PSA levels that are very concerning. And I said, oh, I'm sure that's wrong. They said, well, it could be. Let's do it again. And they did it again, and my PSA level was a 14, which is, as you know, very, very high. And so what that started was a series, about a 2-year time of all kinds of tests. And listen, the treatment of cancer has come a long way. Yeah. If this had happened even 15 years ago, I might not be here to talk about it. They might not have, had the tools to really treat it at that point. But my life literally became centered around finding out how bad the cancer was, how big it was, how active it was, had it spread, was it contained? That was the big deal. Was it contained in the prostate? And, down to UCLA. By the way, I should mention at this point that my caregivers, I'm in the UCLA program. And finer care and doctors, I don't think exist in the world. And so the fact that we're now working with them is another kind of cool part of my personal story. Yeah. But they were amazing and just so caring and on top of things, and had all of these and the latest tests. They put me into a couple of things where they had just received authorization, et cetera, et cetera. So the fortunate thing is that it was contained. And there was about 2 weeks there where they said, well, we're waiting for the results of this new test.
That must have been a difficult 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because they were really careful about it and had to take out these samples and everything else. And I can remember, I'll never forget sitting in the doctor's office with my wife, and he said, hopefully this has been contained and we can go in and perform surgery and take out your prostate. And I remember saying, well, what if it's not? What if it's spread? And he paused and he looked at me and he said, well, then it's a question of time management.
Wow.
Which just floored me, right? I mean, I have rarely been at a loss of words in my life, and that was one of them. And essentially what he was saying is, and then it's going to get you. The question is, how long can we delay that, right? Yeah. Anyway, fortunately, they came back and said, no, it's all contained. We're going to go take it out. And you know that today, there's essentially 3 ways that people treat cancer. They undergo surgery. In my case, they took out a 6-hour procedure under the incredibly skilled hands of a UCLA oncologist. And or they chemotherapy, which we've all had experiences with people, and that's nasty stuff, as you know. I mean, that essentially, and I'm no doctor, by the way, but we're going to put a lot of poison in your body that's going to kill your cancer. We hope it doesn't kill you.
It's going to kill all your good stuff too.
Yeah, that's right. And your hair is going to fall out, and your skin is going to turn yellow, and you're going to be sick. And I should add at this juncture that I'd seen that so many times. And I know there are people who have chemotherapy has worked very well. I have not been personally experienced that with any of my loved ones and whatnot, that they kept them alive for quite a long time, but eventually it took them out.
Sure.
And I saw how they wasted away. And I said, this could have been different after if it had actually happened. But I remember saying to my wife, I don't think I want to I think I'm just going to take the time I've got and enjoy it. Again, I didn't have to face that question, but so the chemotherapy, and then of course there's the radiation, which of course is a little less severe, but very accurate and pinpointed, et cetera, et cetera. So back to my story. I go have the surgery, 6 hours, they take it out. And of course, you have your prostate out, your life changes in a number of significant ways, but you're alive.
You're alive.
I remember asking the doctor, I said, so people who've successfully had had the surgery, do they live a long time? Do you know anybody in their hundreds? Because I always planned on being at least 100, right? I got 30 years to go. And he said, well, a lot more who didn't have it taken out, right? He was actually very, very cool. And so they did. It was successful. And then what happens is you take your blood every 3 months to see how you're doing. And I went from a 14 PSA. And then the first time I had my blood done, I got the test back. And of course, it's all online. And I immediately went to the PSA, and it was 0.01. And I thought, Yahtzee, right?
Yeah.
It's cured.
Yeah.
I went from 14 to a 0.01. I mean, that's nothing, right?
Yeah.
And I remember him calling me and saying, yeah, I mean, we prefer to say zero, C0. And I said, yeah, but 0.01. I mean, he says, yeah, but something's there.
Yeah.
Right. Now the question is it growing? Is it? So over the next 2 years, that 0.01 went to a 0.09, which was enough for them to say, we want to treat this. And way ahead of the game, right? I wasn't in danger of, you got 3 months, you got a year, whatever, but it was, look, we've seen this.
Yeah.
We need to go in and get it.
Yeah.
And radiation is the way to go. So I underwent 6 weeks of radiation, went in every day, Monday through Friday, 10 minutes, never got sick. I was tired. I remember, they're pumping a lot of energy into you. Yeah. Again, UCLA facility, just amazing care. And then the waiting game to see, well, did the radiation work? And then the question, well, if it's still there, then what? And then, of course, there was the conversations about potentially chemotherapy.
Sure.
Because surgery they'd already done, right?
Yeah.
So I waited, and it was 3 months. You have to wait 3 months. And they put you on all kinds of stuff. They take your testosterone to zero, and you take all kinds of other stuff. None of it debilitating. I continued to work and play tennis and everything else. Yeah. And then came the day when I got my blood test, and it was a 0. And I get it tested actually, they don't say a 0. They say undetectable. So
that's okay.
As I get my blood done now, it's undetectable. And what a joy that was for me and my family and for my friends. And I can remember being so grateful for skilled, I know in many cases, these people were going to school for 8, 10, 12 years to learn how to do all this. And I was the beneficiary of that. Yeah. And so of the 2 of the 3 traditional ways they treat cancer, surgery, chemo, and radiation, I've been through 2 of them. Thankfully, never had to go to the 3rd. Yeah. And as I said, again, I sit here today, not only with undetectable cancer, but with the opportunity to work with you and our investors and wonderful people at UCLA to try to provide another alternative to those 3 approaches. And that's a universal vaccine, which I just couldn't be more delighted to be working on that. And thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for all your good work in this.
Thank you, Byron. Yeah, and I appreciate your sharing your story. It's interesting. I had my father, my uncle, all had prostate cancer. My father-in-law, and then my grandfather died from prostate cancer. And as a guy in his early 50s, knowing that it's genetic, so I started around at the age of 40, getting my PSA tested, and I'm pretty religious about that, knowing that it's headed my way at some point, but I've got to stay on top of it. So I had breakfast this morning with a former business partner and just a dear friend of mine who is battling throat cancer and went through surgery and radiation, not the chemo, but the radiation had this weird impact, and he lost all of his teeth. And so he's had dental implants that are put in. He now has beautiful new teeth, but he's lost 90 pounds, and it's just been, he looks probably 10 or 12 years older than his actual age, and it's tragic. Really what this disease does and can do. And I think one of the, as you said, you really articulated well, but one of the reasons I get so excited about Cancer Vax is, this vaccine, when we're successful in developing it and bringing it to market, it's fairly innocuous. It's pretty easy, and it simply informs the immune system to target, to figure out where the bad stuff is, spoken like a true scientist, right? And to go get it. And what a beautiful thing that can be.
Well, and that's a great point, and thank you for sharing that. And I must tell you that when I was first approached and learned about Cancer Vax and invited to be part of the team, when that part of it was presented to me. And I said, well, how does this work? I said, well, it works with, and again, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, so you'll disabuse me of anything that I say here that isn't necessarily quite on point. But the ability to utilize the existing defenses and innate qualities of your body to heal itself was so compelling to me, and immediately just made sense to me, which is why I'm so religious about my diet, right? Because I know that there's a rhythm and a harmony to all of this, whether it's environmental, whether it's your body, the things that you put into your body to nourish it, and that all the different properties of all these vegetables and grains and seeds and fruits and different things that the earth so abundantly provides us, and that have different properties that can ward off different things. And it's the same thing, right? It's using what's already in us, that we're born with this, this ability to heal ourselves. And, animals have that. They have it instinctively. I had dogs all the time growing up, and I would say to my father, my dog wouldn't eat. It was my job to feed my dog. And I said, well, Little Red won't eat. And he said, well, my dad was, well, he's sick. And I said, well, how do you know that? And he said, well, because he's not eating. So his body says, leave me alone. It's fasting, right? And let my body work on this. And I said, but I see him eating grass. He said, yeah, the chlorophyll in the grass. So instinctively, human beings and animals kind of know. You'll see out in the forest, right? Animals eating certain kind of barks that they find out later on, or roots or leaves or whatever that have certain properties. So again, it's so compelling to me that all of this, the foundation of this is our bodies and our defense systems. And I sure wish this had been around, 5 years ago. But what a blessing it'll be to people in the future.
That's right. Well, hopefully we can really leave a legacy for our kids and others. Byron, thank you so much for sharing such a personal story. And I'm excited to work with you, but I'm also excited that you're still around to talk about it. So congratulations.
Thank you, Ryan, and thanks for all you do.